Hey, thanks so much for coming out. I'm Chris Lowell. I directed and wrote the film with Mo Narang. This is my writing partner here. Thanks so much for coming out, you guys. I really appreciate it. And this is Greg.
Hi, everybody. So I think we want to start with just if you two could just introduce yourselves, get a little bit of background on you, and then I want to sort of dive into the film and how you made this movie.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. I'll start. So my name's Chris Lowell. I, like I said, directed and co-wrote and co-produced and just about everything but acted in this film. And I wrote it with Mo. I was born and raised in Georgia, and have worked most of my career as an actor. And this was my first kind of foray into directing a feature. And yeah, that's it from me. Mo?
My name is Mo Narang. I co-wrote it with Chris. And
Is your mic off?
No.
There you go.
I'm good. I'm there. I'll just enunciate. My name is Mo Narang. I co-wrote the film with Chris, and I produced it as well because both of us, I think, have a hard time letting go of these projects, and I just needed a role after the writing was done. This is my first foray into film whatsoever. I worked in finance prior to this, and now I guess I make films with him.
So, whoa, sorry, loud. So where did the idea for the movie come from? Had you worked before? Was it one of your ideas? Was it just sort of sitting down and kind of talking about things?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Mo is kind of like on a professional and emotional just tailspin down. It was sort of, is that inaccurate?
That's not inaccurate. Yeah. Chris and I had been friends for a while, and we had this lake house that we used to go to that was a very seminal place for us. And we were there, and I was correctly in a career tailspin, and we were talking about the things that frightened us and the things we loved, and we talked about loss a lot. What if we lost this place? Both of us had will discussions with our parents for the first time, and so that was a big topic of discussion for us. What if we lost our parents? And that was really where the initial ideas for this film started to gestate.
And sort of coincidentally, it began entirely as obviously as a work of fiction. And then within the year, we did lose the house, and friends of ours' parents started getting sick, and suddenly this story that was purely fiction and kind of just an interesting hypothetical exploration became much more real and much more important for us to tell the story as authentically as we felt we could.
And so what was the writing process like? Did you start sort of soft like that and build up? Were you in the same room together, or did you email?
Yeah, I think we have a really unique writing process, which is we come up with a really detailed outline together, and where we figure out the story just in sort of general plot points, but we have it all kind of laid out. And then Mo and I go off, and we each write an entire full-length screenplay by ourselves. And then we send the screenplays back to the other person, and so then that person reads what the other one wrote. And then we get excited again because it's like a fresh, perspective. And then we take our favorite pieces from each person's draft and create something together. We sort of collate a draft after that. And the beauty of that, I think, is that it allows us, when you're working with a writing partner in the room, Mo might have an idea that I will preemptively shoot down. Just be like, I don't like that. And he never really gets the opportunity to really explore that idea. So when we do it separately, you kind of get like twice the amount of words than you normally would, and you can really explore those, hunches that you have. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
How similar were the drafts? I mean, it's a fascinating process because I'd never heard of that approach to writing a script before. Yeah, well, maybe that's why it works so well, because it's sort of a novel approach. How similar were the drafts?
I mean, the nice thing is there are areas in which, if I'm writing and I know Chris is sticking to this outline, but I have some sort of inspiration I want to try, I can, I have the freedom to kind of deviate because I can rely on him, and vice versa. Other times, it's frightening. Like, we'll go through a scene and it'll be written verbatim in his draft and mine, and we wouldn't have said a word to one another about it. So it varied dramatically, but again, like the amount of material it produces just lets you see the story from so many different vantages.
And what's also nice is, like, I think anyone who's ever, when you're writing, it's like you hit major obstacles and potholes where you can't, like you're stuck on a character, you don't really understand the character, you're stuck on a certain plot point, you can't get a transition right, and it would be so refreshing to just sort of be struggling through it and then to read his draft and see, like, oh, you totally have this character way better than I do. And that also really is a helpful journey of getting to the finish line, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're right that it can be challenging sometimes sitting in a room with somebody else and not wanting to hurt feelings, not wanting to step on toes, but you also do want to assert your own opinions, and that can be a hard thing to do. This is a really nice way to sidestep that.
Yeah.
So when you made the decision to make this leap from an actor to a filmmaker, what was behind that? I mean, what inspired that transition?
Well, I think more and more I think about it, I think so much of directing was a response to feelings I had as an actor. But initially, I went to college by the way, I'm a student here, which is so weird now to think about, because this coincidentally is where the screening is. But I went to USC for film production. The idea really being, I grew up in Georgia, and Atlanta is now this crazy industry town, but that's a very new thing. And so I grew up in Atlanta, and at the time, there was just nothing there but like regional theater. And so I just sort of got it in my mind that I would, if I could just get my foot into the door in any capacity, be it through writing, editing, cinematography, directing, producing, that eventually I could weasel my way in as an actor. It was really like a very strange approach, but I was just like trying to do it by any means necessary. And then I started acting very quickly and by just so much luck. And, but I never really let go of this need, this want to direct. And it was actually a really kind of accidental, like a happy accident, because what I realized when it came time to step on set for the first time as a director, how much I'd learned from, most directors who just want to be directors, they have very little experience with other directors. Whereas as an actor, I've been on so many jobs now, I've worked with so many directors that I really understand the way I like directors talking to actors, the way things to do, things not to do. So I feel like I had this real wealth of experience to pull from to kind of avoid certain traps, which was really, really gratifying. And then frankly, I just wanted to talk to actors the way I wish a director would talk to me, which was, I think in a lot of ways like very cathartic to be able to communicate to actors that way.
Were there, and in making that leap, when you found yourself on the other side of the camera, were there certain surprises that you sort of hadn't experienced before as an actor that came up?
Well, the biggest thing is I was really worried that I was going to be super fucking jealous of all of the actors. Like I was going to be watching the monitor and hating the performance that someone was giving and thinking like, I want to be in front of the camera again. Like I was really, really worried that might happen. It didn't at all. In fact, if anything, it only solidified my feelings that I don't think I would want to act in something that I'm also directing. I just think that's wearing too many hats, quite frankly. I know I have plenty of friends who do it and who do it well. For me, it's more, we're all actors in this room. It's like, I think the dream, right, when you're acting is that you can totally find it in your, power to check out of everything around you and just focus on the person you're working against and somehow shut out all the other noise. And I feel like for me, that's just like necessarily impossible if I'm also having to think about, I just feel like I would be looking at an actor and the whole time be thinking like the boom's in the shot, I can see a shadow over there, or like the dolly's not moving fast enough, or like, I just feel like I would have to be having like one foot in both doors, and that just wouldn't work for me. Also, I've worked with other actors who have worked with actor-directors, and I think one of the big mistakes that is made often is if I'm directing this scene between you and I'm in it, is when it's on your coverage, is that as I'm working off of you, I'm also it's like you can see me not liking what you're doing, which is a huge deterrent for you doing anything, frankly, you know? I always want to tell people who are starring in things that they're also directing to avoid doing that to their fellow actors, because I think that really cuts people off at the knees a little bit.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's great insight. So when you started with casting, so you weren't going to cast yourself, were these actors that you had both known before, that you'd worked with before? How did the casting process work? Because they're fantastic performances.
Yeah. You know, I really, I feel like the saving grace of this film, I think the thing that I am always most proud of is the chemistry of the actors, who are all wonderful, very talented people, and very nice people. If you ever see them, ever, just say hi. They're really wonderful people. I love them. We were literally, during the screening, making a big batch of mint juleps to drink with them tonight, as a sort of pre-celebration for tomorrow. In terms of knowing any of the actors, really the only one that we knew beforehand was Beck. Beck's the guy with the mustache. He was actually gonna try and be here today, but he couldn't make it. And he was my roommate freshman year of college. He's incredible. He's on Saturday Night Live now. He plays Baby Boss, I guess. And he's also the guy from those AT&T commercials. You know, they're like, "What's better, faster or slower?" And all the kids, you know. And Beck, it's interesting, Beck and I were roommates freshman year and had very different kind of trajectories. Beck was a BFA acting student at the drama school at USC, which is very prestigious. And freshman year, like within 6 months, I had stumbled into a career by accident and was shooting a show, like a primetime TV network show. And Beck was, I think, he had for me, it seemed to happen very quickly. And with Beck, you know, he studied, he was like kind of the cream of the crop at USC. He graduated in 2007. He was the only of his class to be able to book a manager and an agent. And then the writer's strike happened 3 months after he graduated. And then his management company folded. And then his agent got fired. And all of a sudden, he was just sort of dead in the water. For years, he really was struggling. And I think what got him the career that he has now was just creating his own content. He would do these YouTube videos with his sketch group called Good Neighbor, who were two other guys that we met at college, who now are also on Saturday Night Live. And that allowed him, he did this one thing called Fresh Perspectives, which was him talking to kids, and that literally got him those AT&T commercials, which is crazy. And then Lauren Michaels loved the Good Neighbor sketch videos that he would do, and that's what got his audition for Saturday Night Live. So when we were casting at the time, you know, none of these actors were really well known at all. I mean, Reed was probably the most well known. Reed's in the show Veep, and Ryan had done the revamp of 90210, right? Of course, which we all know and love. But most of them, you know, Brett Dalton, who plays James, he's now on the show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this was Brett's first gig, I feel like. Yeah, it's his only film credit. I mean, we really like, for us, the casting process, well, I'm talking too much. You talk about the casting process. We have a very specific way.
Okay. So when Chris and I were actually fundraising for the movie, we watched pretty much every ensemble film you could think of twice, because we're fiends for research, and we just got it in our heads that those films live and die with cast chemistry. So we decided we're going to have a very rigorous casting process. We were going to do chemistry reads. We were going to have everybody commit to run a picture. And we also wanted them to basically be people we could be friends with. We wanted to know that we were going to go to this house with people who we could recreate the magic we'd felt at the original Lake House. And I think when we finished casting, going into pre-production, we just knew that whatever happened with the filmmaking process, we were going to be able to take a victory lap on our cast, because we've been pretty enamored with them since they walked into their auditions, respectively.
And I think we really fought for a lot of these actors. You know, we had bigger names that one of the rules that we had in this, if you want to like actually watch gray hairs grow in front of you on a producer's head, you say things like, no offers. You know, everyone's going to have to audition if they're going to be in this movie, and we want to shoot it on film. But with the actors, for example, you know, like everybody auditioned. There were no offers. We had some interest from bigger actors, but they all, and this is a stupid fucking ego thing that I think a lot of actors get into the habit of. And frankly, I don't even know if it's the actors as much as their reps, where they say, like, no, offer only for this person. And we're like, that's just not how it's going to go. Like, they're going to come in. I want to make sure that they've got chemistry with this other person that they're going to be working with. Like, I want this to make sense. And so we really had to go to bat for some of these actors, and it's true. It's such a victory lap because
The ones we had to fight hardest for are our biggest actors now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and what was the experience like, having written these characters, having spent so much time with these, your own personal experiences at the cabin, with people like this, and then you write these characters down, and then you have real actors stepping into these roles. What was that like? Did you feel like the actors were fitting the roles that you had written and conceived, or had you written something like just a scaffolding that then the actors were coming in and inhabiting?
I think our early drafts, like the very first draft, we were inspired by, you know, our friends, the people that, you know, that's who we were writing about, and we were way too precious. And we didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and, you know, we didn't want anyone to be flawed, and it was just boring as shit. And I remember Tate Taylor, who directed The Help, he read an early draft of our script, and he goes, okay, everything that happens in Act 3, put that in Act 1, and then see where the story goes, you know? Which is a great piece of advice. And he's like, and you got to let your characters get messy. I mean, you got to just let them be imperfect, flawed people. And once we did that, it was great for us because it gave us a lot more freedom to not feel obligated to honor these true stories or these actual people. We could just create new people. And then at a certain point, I think it's sort of a scary risk to take as a writer, but it's a really rewarding one when it works, is then you just kind of turn it over to your actors and you let them tell, you know, the story and the words through their voices, through their eyes. And you know, I think what they created is better than anything we could have hoped for.
Yeah. I mean, as a writer, it's amazing to see someone walk into a room and then elevate your words, which is what each of our actors were able to do. And it's a magical experience. To any of you who write as well, it's incredible.
And I think it was probably very exciting for the actors as well, because I think that sometimes directors or writers will go in and try to tamp that down, whatever's coming into the room, because they have such a specific idea for what they wanted, and they don't want anything else sort of interrupting that vision. And so the fact that you were so open to the actors coming in and bringing themselves and bringing their own talents, I'm sure was incredibly exciting for them, and probably accounts for some of the, you know, what's so great about these performances, what's so lively about these performances and true.
I mean, I think, like, Chris having experience as an actor, and that this started as a collaborative experience between the two of us, allowed us to be, I guess, a little less defensive and a little less precious.
I think also, like, I mean, you guys know this, when you know, most auditions that we go out on, like for pilots or for anything for film and television, like a long scene is like a page and a half. You have no time to really like get involved or engaged in the work. It's not like doing a play where you have 20-minute long scenes, or, you know, an hour and 20-minute long scenes that you can kind of really, if you don't start off in the moment, you can kind of find it. With, you know, film and TV, it just like it's over in an eighth of a page. And so we wanted to write scenes in the first place that just had some meat to them, and that kind of went on and were a little bit longer and a little bit more dialogue heavy. And it's a testament to our actors as well, because they showed up off book. They were all total professionals. And so the few times that they did stray from the page to make it sound better coming out of their mouth, or because they had an idea, or because there was a silence that they wanted to fill, I think there was such a trust there that they were honoring our story and the words that we had written, that we owed them an equal amount of respect if they wanted to deviate here and there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's an equal amount of laziness that can come from actors who are just like, I don't need the script. Like, I got the gist. I'm going to do it my own way. Like, it's not that. I think that's incredibly disrespectful. But I think but I think it was the opposite. I think everyone came in knowing the words, being off book, respecting the words that we had written, and then every so often when they would take it on their own, it was a joy to watch. Yeah.
So the movie, to me, I mean, one of the most fascinating things about the movie is the tone of the movie. And tone, as you know, is one of the most difficult things to get right in a film, to have a believable tone, a consistent tone. But what's interesting about your film is that it's very heartfelt and honest, but at the same time, they're incredibly playful moments, like, you know, the painting on the chin. And it almost reminds me of like Godard's Woman is a Woman. It's really that kind of playfulness, and it's really kind of wonderful. I mean, what are your filmmaking influences that drove
Really,
that?
really glad you said that. It's like, well done there, Greg. I mean, the big one was we love Truffaut. We love like Jules Legime. That movie begins with this like really profound, intense quote, and then this like crazy opening credit sequence, which sort of inspired what we were doing here with ours, with this quote about Hemingway and Gertrude Stein. And then there's just such playfulness in Jules Legime, which we love. There's a lot of games being played, and it's a really it's a really heartbreaking story that's got this kind of light sort of veil over it. And so there were a lot of moments like the upside down chin faces, the sort of extended Super 8 sequences. Even the round is what we call it, when there's those three scenes happening at once where the dialogue is kind of leaking from one into another. Those are things that we'd seen either in foreign films or like the round, I think, is something that we've seen a lot in plays where you'll have like a scene going on over here and then it corresponds with what's going on over here. In film, we couldn't really find an example of that happening. The only thing we could think of that comes close to that is the end of the Austin Powers movies. There's like a 7-minute long like penis joke sequence that happens, which is cool, you know. But yeah. So I think the big influences, you know, I mean, obviously you I think we would be lying if we didn't mention Return of Secaucus 7 or The Big Chill, which are obviously like the kind of like Breakfast Club, like these grandfathers of this sort of ensemble in one location reunion sort of films, which we loved. I'm trying to think if there were other ones that really got us excited.
I mean, I'll say we learned as much from the bad ones as the good ones. I don't know if I want to mention that, like by name or title.
Yeah, but we definitely. I think you're right. I think for every like great film we watched and learned something, we'd learn like 100 more things from a similar structured bad film. You know, you learn a lot of the things to avoid.
And I think one of the really instructive things, I'm an instructor here at the New School, but I don't have you in a class, so.
I know, I've been taking all these classes online. Look, I'm trying, okay? I'm gonna get there.
But one of the very instructive things I think about this film is how quick on its feet it is to get across a certain emotion and then really shift over to something else that's really appealing and surprising and interesting. So like the party scene when everybody's dancing, and then as soon as Daniel picks up the camera, you're in the camera. Music shifts, and there's not a mic on the camera, so it's like a completely different, and then the whole party scene plays out in a different way, and you kind of see everyone differently. I mean, where did that come from? Was that something that was found in post that you sort of played around with?
No, we definitely, and that's, I mean, we shot this movie on film, and we shot, that sequence is shot on Super 8, and Super 8's such an old medium now that you can't even hook a monitor up to it to watch it, so our DP, our cinematographer, was like, well, you should just shoot it because you're going to know what you want more than I am, you know? So I shot, when we literally like just lit the whole house, the crew went upstairs, and then Mo was just reading off the page, like calling people to do things, and we had music playing, and we just sort of shot it kind of all over the place. But the idea behind it was, I mean, like, you know, Daniel is seeing the world through these very rose-colored glasses, and sort of not accepting reality, and just because, you know, because it's so bleak right now. And so we wanted to find a way to see what essentially is a bunch of 20, 30-somethings being drunk and stupid the way he sees it. And so what better way than to literally see it through his eyes, which is what we do when he picks up that Super 8. It's a, you see them dancing and drinking and stumbling over tables, and then Daniel picks up this camera, and the rest of the world, you know, goes out, and we just see it how he does, which is oversaturated and extremely nostalgic and sort of as pure and as kind of romantic as one can be. It's one. I mean, I can tell you, like, as a filmmaker now, that one of the, you get dailies back with film, or we got weeklies because we couldn't afford dailies. So, and I remember you'd get the footage and you'd kind of be like, okay, this looks good, and you don't really know if there's a film in there, if you're getting the tone right. And I remember when we got the Super 8 footage back and seeing that and knowing like, oh, okay, we're good. This is the right mood. Like if it's anything like this, we'll be okay.
Because there's heart there, there's a story there.
Yeah, it was true.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting gears a little bit, what was production like? I mean, what did your crew look like? How many people on the crew? How many shooting days? I mean, what was sort of the day-to-day experience of shooting this film?
It was frenetic and terrifying. We shot it over 18 shooting days, 3 weeks in this lake house in northern Michigan. As we said, we were shooting on film, but we couldn't afford to ship our film overnight to our developing lab in New York, and so we were getting weeklies back. So we shot a third of the film without knowing at all what it looked like, and
focus.
Right. And then actually, like the first week we got it back, we did have some issues with focus, and we panicked and drank a lot of coffee, and it was. I mean, on the acting side, it was incredible. Our actors are amazing. We did actually find a pretty amazing crew. A lot of Michigan people who had worked on kind of bigger films and were willing to invest in our story, which was incredible. It was about 40 people on the crew total.
I'd say 40 to 50.
Yeah, including like the actors and ourselves. Chris and I lived in the house, which was an interesting idea. And we spent like I think that one of the most difficult aspects of it was we spent the latter 2 weeks in what are called splits, because we had a lot of night scenes, but it doesn't get dark in northern Michigan in the summertime until like 11 p.m. And so we'd start our shooting days at about 4 p.m., finish up our day scenes, take lunch at midnight, and then shoot till like 4 in the morning. And then Chris and I would come back, the sun would be coming up. We had our rooms tented in, which just meant they turned into saunas. And we'd sleep for maybe 2 hours and then start working on the next day.
The other thing is, I've had the luck of being able to work on some really big projects where you feel a real hierarchy of like the studio producers and then the production company and then the director and the cinematographer and then the actors and I think on a film this small, you really can't have that sort of hierarchy. I think it's very much like, as an example, a lot of times when you break for lunch, the actors on just about every job I've been on, they'll shepherd the actors to the front of the line, like the actors eat first, which is bullshit. I mean, no offense to us, but I mean, unless it's like we've got to get the actors into hair and makeup immediately after, so they need to go through. But like on this, I remember we had a wonderful first AD named Jeremy Phoenix, and I remember at the beginning there was a moment where one of the producers was like, "All right, let's get the actors through," and Jeremy was like, "That's not going to happen. No, the crew's hungry. They're going to eat right now, and that's that." I highly recommend, if you guys ever make any projects, that the food is good. We made that error. A well-fed crew is a happy crew. You really start to feel an undertone of mutiny when they're not hungry. When they're hungry or not enjoying the film. And we had a very particular cinematographer in terms of diet. So it was just that was definitely kind of an eye opener.
No PB&Js on set. I heard, unless it's a snack, I heard stories that Cassavetes would cook these very elaborate spaghetti and pasta dinners and just overflowing, have these great home-cooked meals for his cast and crew. So maybe that's a little bit of his secret.
See, I like
to his great
that. I like that. Well, actually, what we did, it was fun. What we did before we started shooting is we got the cast up there early, and we asked everybody in the cast to bring just keepsakes, mementos from their youth, from their childhood, and put them in the house. And you never see them. I mean, they're never really featured on camera, but the actors know that they're there, and I think that gave them like those triggers are nice when you need them, to know that they're around, to know that if you open this drawer, there's going to be a teddy bear that you actually had when you were a kid. And we had them come up early, stay in the house, cook, play whiskey slaps, like to sort of kind of get really invested in the space and the world and each other, which was really, really helpful, I think. One of my favorite kind of actor-director moments, actually, is that sequence when Daniel comes down the stairs, the shit has kind of hit the fan, and everyone's pissed off at each other, and then Daniel kind of has this breakdown where he's like, none of you came to the funeral. And Ryan Eggold, who's our lead, who's a wonderful actor, was, we'd done it a few different times, and he was freaking out because he didn't feel like he was getting it. And, I would say, like, all right, come down and just blow up, go crazy, scream at these freaking people. And then he would do that, and then I'd say, like, all right, keep it inside. Just you don't even have the energy to expel on these people. It's not even worth your energy to get mad at them because it's useless. And he would do that. And then for the last take, I said, okay, just come downstairs. Brett's going to give you the lead in line, and just go straight into the monologue. So Ryan goes upstairs, and when he goes upstairs, I had months earlier, right as soon as we'd cast him, I had everybody send me all these photos of them. And so I printed out all of these photos of Ryan as a baby with his actual parents. And I placed them all over the house and all over the stairs. And so he comes downstairs, and he starts kind of going. And at this point, he's so up in his head because he's on, like, take number 9, and he's just thinking he's not doing a good job, and he's not and he starts going to the monologue, and then he looks down, and he sees these photos of, like, him and his parents. And he starts saying these things about, like, my parents died, and none of you came to the funeral. And he just... it just totally, came to fruition. It really came to life in front of us, and it was good. It was a good little moment, you know what I mean? It felt really nice to see that.
You kept it, it was a very personal experience for the actors as well then, made it as personal as possible. That's a great...
Yeah, I just feel like when I was studying acting, that was something that you would always, it almost felt like cheating, but I would show up to do a scene when it was like in class, and my teachers would be like, bring bring triggers for yourself, place them all over the stage, just... and I remember thinking at the time, like, I wish I could do this on a set. And then when I was directing, I was like, oh, I can totally fucking do this on a set. I was like, guys, bring it. Bring your stuff in. Bring anything that's going to help. Whatever will help you feel comfortable and confident, that's the end game. Like, that's how you're going to give your best performance, I read about interviews with directors who are, like, tyrants, and that's sort of their style. They keep you... And I just don't think that's the way we like to work at all.
So, coming at this with your experience, it's hard for any first-time filmmakers to get the trust of somebody to put money into a movie, for a crew to come in, for producers to get involved, and for all these people. It sounds like being an actor, that the actors probably had a very good vibe with you, but how did you find, going from acting to directing, how did you find everybody else's response to what you were trying to do in terms of financiers, producers, this kind of, more sort of the nuts and bolts?
We kidnapped their children. We did not kidnap any children that I know of. Honestly, one of the biggest helps was having Mo and I together. I think I was able to bring a lot of experience, which made a lot of investors feel comfortable. I had done Oscar-nominated films. I had a lot of connections in this community, in the sort of entertainment community. There were a lot of favors I could ask. And then Mo, coming from this finance world, was able to help structure with our amazing producers just like a great business incentive that was very much in favor of the investor. And so, Jason and Paul, our production company, Storyboard Entertainment, they were fundraising on their own, and then Mo and I were fundraising on our own, sort of as a team. And what was really nice is when, I was able to talk about people I could lean on, people that were willing to help us out creatively, and then Mo would be able to answer all of these questions on, and with I would have stuttered the whole way through it, and you were able to talk like a grown adult who knows how to do a modicum of accounting.
Yeah, to some degree. I'll say, like, the one amazing and wonderful thing. So the way Chris and I did our fundraising is we basically flew around the country, sitting in people's living room, pitching this movie. And I think it took a couple of those meetings for us to really hone our pitch. And by the end, the wonderful thing that I think the people who chose to invest with us were saying is that they were investing in us a lot more than the project. And I think they had an understanding, and we tried to emphasize this, is that investment in film is inherently a risky proposition. But that if they, stuck with us, that over time, our talent would kind of pay out. And I think a lot of them believed in that. It was incredibly generous of them to do so, especially with no track record. And I'm hoping that sort of this film will be validating in some way. But yeah, it was quite a journey.
And then when you were on set also, what was it like? Now, because some of the scenes are very complex in terms of very quick dialogue, spurts of dialogue from different actors, and the camera's cutting. Did you have multiple cameras on set, or did you? There wasn't the.
Thank
there
you,
wasn't
though.
the
I
money
appreciate that, but not even
multiple
remotely close.
Did you play each of those scenes all the way through? How did you?
Yeah,
shoot?
I mean, some of these scenes are like 20 pages long. Like there's that crazy dinner table scene, and we realized at one point we had scheduled it over 3 days, and then I don't even know what we were thinking, but at some point we're like, we're just going to shoot it all today. And the actors were on board, and frankly, the actors were already off book. I mean, they were, we broke for lunch, and I would look out the window, and they would be sitting outside, just like running lines. I mean, they just were just a great group of professionals. And so the way we shot that scene is we literally had a setup on every actor, and we'd be like, all right, you get 2 takes. One that's like, where, keep it on book, and then one where you can kind of play a little bit of jazz. Be like 1, 2. I mean, and we just literally went around the table, and then we shot 2 masters, and it was like, all right, we're out of here. I mean, I think the other thing that's nice about shooting on film, which if any of you guys can ever shoot on film, I highly recommend it. It's a little bit scary. It's very scary, but it's so rewarding. And honestly, what it does to a set is really amazing, because when you shoot digital, there's this sense of like, oh, let's keep shooting. Let's do another take. Why not? We can just keep rolling. Who cares? And it's not expensive. And it's like, what is expensive is time, and you're losing so much of it by just shooting nonstop. Whereas when you're shooting on film, when you can hear the celluloid going through the magazine, everybody just, takes it up a notch. They realize how they're only going to get 2 or 3 takes max before they have to move on. And I think that really makes it sort of urges people to bring their A game really quickly.
Well, I mean, the movie certainly feels directed. It feels like the shots are consciously chosen, which sometimes, you're right, when there's digital video, there's a sense of, okay, we'll just get a few of these cameras in because the cameras are so inexpensive, and we'll just shoot and shoot and shoot on everybody. And sometimes that can work, and you kind of discover the movie in the editing room. But there's something about this film that, again, because I think you're right, you only get a few opportunities, there's only a few setups you can do, you can only sort of roll so much film, that the shot choice becomes much more important and conscious. And then there's something that's more deliberate then, I think, that appears on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think I work as a photographer as well, and I shoot only on film, mostly in black and white, and I like the limitations of it, It's a similar philosophy. When I know I only have 12 exposures, I'm going to really ask myself, is this a photo I want to take? And if so, let me just take an extra second and really compose the image the way it should look, and then I only need to take it a couple times. As opposed to this idea of like just sort of spray and pray, where you just kind of like, and it's like something will be in there, I'll Photoshop it, it'll look great. That wasn't really our style. We were a very analog set, I think.
Do we have note cards from the? Okay, all right. Yeah. So let me just sort of ask like a final question. There's a lot of actors want to be directors, make this turn into screenwriting, directing, all these things. I mean, having gone through the experience now, what is your advice? What's your insight in terms of making that transition as beneficial to them, as smooth to them as possible? What can they be doing to prepare to make this step themselves?
Well, I think I know what yours is going to be, but what I would say is the thing I think I've learned is, like, as an actor, I've done so many jobs where you just throw all pride out the window, just because it's what the job entails. And I thought I had like no pride left, and then I made a film, and I realized there's this whole other deeper well. And honestly, that's truthfully, like, it's something that I've kind of like come full circle and become proud of, is like you just have to kind of not be ashamed to do whatever it takes to get your film made. And by that I mean, like, Yesterday, I was walking through the new school, taping up posters of my movie here, next to like people's, bands and, bake sales and study abroad programs. And here I am like taping up my fucking posters. We ran a crazy Kickstarter campaign, and before we came here, we took them out to lunch to say thank you. I mean, I think there's this, I just feel like you really have to, it just never stops. You have to just kind of keep going and keep, and just you have to sort of think outside the box. I mean, when we hit a wall with our money where we needed to raise about $50,000 more, and we couldn't because we'd hit a ceiling on our capital, private equity. And so we were like, all right, let's launch a Kickstarter campaign. And that ended up being insanely successful. And I think part of the reason it was so successful is because we had there wasn't like, all right, well, there was no sense of that hierarchy of like, well, I'm not going to write. I mean, Mo and I wrote back to every single tweet that came our way, mostly because we didn't know we weren't supposed to do that or that people don't do that. We were very new to social media. And I don't know, I think there's that level of personal connection really, I think, registers with people. And I think when you're making a project and someone can see how hard you're working and how much you are giving everything to the project, it makes them want to help you. I think it really, when you're asking for favors, if people can see that you're asking because you've literally tried everything else, and you know what I mean, I think they want to help. People want to help. So yeah, that would be mine. That would be my piece of advice.
I think mine would just be like create as often as you can, as much as you can. I think the friends we've had who've been the most successful are unabashed about always kind of finding at least a little bit of time to put themselves in that creative space and make something. Sometimes it's totally weird, sometimes it's totally offbeat, but I think at least I've found whenever I've had something be a success, I've only really been able to connect the dots in retrospect. It's very hard for me to know as I'm doing something what the ultimate payoff is going to be. And the only way I've ever been able to do anything remotely successful is just by getting in the habit of creating every day. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, if you're able to do that, you'll have enough to just create something and make something beautiful.
That's great. That's great advice. So thank you all for coming. If we could get one more round of applause for our filmmakers here.